All right, folks, it is official. President Trump has pardoned the January 6th protesters, hostages, rioters, insurrectionists, whatever the hell you want to call it, and we'll talk about all of that. Wow. Some of this is understandable for why he did it. A little bit more of it is baffling. And at best, some of it is really frustrating. Now, understandable, the whole claim is that they didn't get a fair trial. They were giving lengthy sentences that were overkill, that they didn't deserve. I believe there's some of that in there. I mean, at the end of the day, you did storm the Capitol building where the entire head of the United States government was located. It's kind of like if you commit a violent offense against a citizen compared to committing that same offense against a cop or a federal officer. The punishment's going to be greater. They're going to try to make an example of you if you do something to a cop or a federal officer versus another citizen. I mean, the vice president's in the building and you guys are threatening to take his life. Do you really expect to be treated the same as if you went and stole televisions out of Best Buy? A lot of MAGA, a lot of Trump supporters seem to think these things are comparable. I understand their point, but I do believe it's probably because they favor the people on January 6th versus, let's say, Black Lives Matter or some other group. I think if it was reversed, they would totally understand making an example out of somebody trying to storm the Capitol building, threatening to take the life of the vice president. Ashley Babbitt is another one I've talked about many times before. I also think that she, too, is being given this hierarchy simply because she's one of the team. I think that climbing through a window and, a guy's aiming a firearm and telling you to back up and you do it anyway, in my opinion, what she did is kind of like the definition of fuck around and find out. But MAGA views Ashley Babbitt as one of the team, and they're circling the wagons to defend her. So I understand what they're doing, but it is biased because they're seeing it as a person that belongs to MAGA. They're not viewing it through an unbiased lens. They're going to give MAGA the benefit of the doubt. So that's the part where I say I understand and Trump said they didn't get a fair trial. Now, parts that baffle me is President Trump stating that these folks had served plenty of time already and that he had to get them out of this jail because it was disgusting and inhumane. Now, I did a short on this because our federal institutions are now operated by Trump. Yeah, Biden had his time, Obama had his time, but Trump is now the one that's in control of the federal penal system. If he can literally order a federal prison to be shut down. It's all under him. Executive order, this place is inhumane and disgusting. I thereby order it to be shut down, or I want an investigation, or I want it cleaned up, or whatever. The reason I'm asking this is because if he suggested he got them out of there because the prison was disgusting and inhumane, keep in mind when he got the January 6th protesters out of prison, the place didn't become vacant. There are other Americans still in this so-called inhumane and disgusting environment. Should he not be obligated to get them out as well? I mean, unless it's just a matter of I only care about the folks that were defending me and I don't give a damn about other Americans that may be in an inhumane environment. Because he's on record saying the place is inhumane. Going to jail does not entitle you to go to somewhere that is quote unquote inhumane. That violates human rights laws. So if he doesn't do anything after admitting the place is inhumane, how does that make him look? So we'll talk about that. I heard some people push back and say, well, what did Biden do and all of that? If you want to suggest that Biden failed at it, we can do that, but that doesn't defend Trump. He's the one on record saying it's inhumane. He's the one that currently has the ability to do something about it. So he would be on the hook for that. So we'll see. But the last part where I understand why, some of it, I'm baffled by other parts of it. And of course, I said at the end, I'm frustrated. Some of the frustrating parts is some of these people were genuine bad guys. Some of these people were really beating the shit out of Capitol Police, stunning them, trying to take their guns from them, beating them with helmets and shields. How do they just get a pardon? Okay, you could commute their sentence. Maybe the 5 years they got, or 10 years in prison they got, or like the Proud Boys and Oath Keeper leaders getting 18 and 20 years. Maybe you think that's a bit much. But he put them in a position where they have no criminal record at all. Meaning that there are people out there that literally tried to beat the shit out of a cop or tried to take a cop's gun or stun the cop, and their record is just as clean as yours and mine. They have nothing on their criminal history. Somebody who went into a store and shoplifted has a stronger criminal history than some of these folks do because they got completely pardoned. That's baffling. That's baffling. You didn't just let them out. You forgave them for everything they did. I don't see how that doesn't look right or how that doesn't look awful, in my opinion. And it gets worse because members of the Republican Party are defending Trump to the level of they're not only saying that these folks were wrongfully charged or made an example of, they're treating them like they're heroes. Bobart, politician Bobart, I think she's a congresswoman, she invited them back to the Capitol building for a tour. So after they beat the Capitol police officer's ass, she's going to give them a paid tour back to the crime scene where they will be treated like heroes. Now keep in mind, when Bobart brings them back to the Capitol building, there will be Capitol police officers stationed there. They have to literally look at the guys who beat the shit out of them being treated better than they are. How does that make sense? How is that not baffling? Remember, the Democrats want to defund the police. The Democrats are the ones that hate police. The right is supposed to be pro-police, backing the blue. How does any of this make sense? They're being treated as heroes. If you want to suggest that they got over-sentenced or, they were made examples of to the extreme, and you don't think that's right, that's one thing. But treating them as if they done absolutely nothing wrong and are just a victim of the system seems to be a bit much when you got so much footage of them doing things. Last but not least, and by the way, this is not going well for President Trump. If you only watch right-wing media, I know a lot of my audience leans right. I got a hell of a lot of MAGA. I love you all. But if you're only watching right-wing media, they're not being candid with you of how this story is. You didn't watch the January 6th hearings, so you don't know the stories of all of these cops that testified about how they got the shit beat out of them and how folks were saying grab their guns and shoot them with it. You haven't heard any of that because you dismissed the hearings being operated by Liz Cheney and Nancy Pelosi as a complete fraud. So you haven't heard any of the cops' testimony. You've only heard testimony from Trump, MAGA, and the protesters that participated. So you've literally only heard one side of the argument. I invite all of you folks, listen to both sides. Listen to both sides, because both sides are only telling you half the story. You need to hear both sides. But here's the last part I don't understand. Trump claims that one of the reasons why he released him is they didn't get a fair trial. I got to tell you, in my humble opinion, if it was up to Trump, there would have been no trial at all. So when he said they didn't get a fair trial, while making it seem like they're heroes, why would they have been placed on trial to begin with? Trump has never accused anyone on January 6th of doing anything wrong. He's referred to it as a love fest, as a good day. They were given a tour. They were let inside. So it ain't that they were given an unfair trial. If you listen to Trump, they probably shouldn't have been arrested to begin with. My guess is if Trump had won in 2020, none of these folks would have ever been charged with anything. So it's not that they got an unfair trial. You didn't want them to be held accountable at all. And for folks who say they were in there too long, this follows up with that statement, because keep in mind, Trump immediately spoke positively of what happened on that day and immediately said that what was happening to them was wrong. So it ain't a matter of them spending too much time in jail. He immediately was against what was happening to them. He didn't want them to do a day at all. So whether they spent 3 years in jail or 3 days, he thought all of that was too long. And the idea that a prison is inhumane and disgusting, I don't know. To me, that falls on deaf ears because you know how long people of color and minorities have been saying that our penal system, our institutions are disgusting and inhumane, and nobody gave a damn about it. I would submit this to you. The same folks that have been caught up in the January 6th protest, riot, or insurrection, those same folks claiming that being in the institutions are inhumane and disgusting would not have given a damn about anybody else saying it before they got caught up in it. In fact, this is the tough on crime group that would have been demanding someone else doing exactly what they did be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law, and would likely have said, yeah, the place may be disgusting and inhumane, but don't do the crime if you can't do the time. You should have thought about that before you did this. Now all of a sudden they're going through it and it's like, oh my God, I can't believe this. That reeks of privilege. I know it's not popular to some of my audience to hear that damn word, but that reeks of privilege. Privilege is complaining about some shit when you go through it because you've always had the privilege of never having to deal with it. Now all of a sudden you realize this really sucks because you have always had the privilege of not having to go through it. But inhumane and disgusting, Trump, if he's admitted that, he is obligated, seems like he should be obligated to get all Americans out or correct the inhumanity and disgusting nature of one of his institutions. What do you think in the comments? He called it inhumane and disgusting. Do you believe he should be obligated to do something about it? Do you believe the pardons were correct? That none of these folks should have done any time behind bars? I'm talking about a complete pardon. We're not talking about a commutation of sentence. Do you believe these folks should be walking around completely criminal history free, able to obtain firearms and everything else? You know most felons have at least 7 years of punishment on their criminal history, whether you're getting a job, an apartment, a bank account, a student loan, all of that comes up. You got felonies. They don't have any of that problem. Do you believe they should at least have a criminal history of what they've done once before? Or should they be completely exonerated of it? Let me know in the comments. As always, feel free to smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, and state your opinion. We don't block, ban, or censor. See you in the next video.